So you just got your brand new Switch 2, or you are about to do so, and you want to be prepared with everything you need to know in terms of setting up this console, and some things that quite honestly Nintendo just does not make straightforward, such as you would think something like a system transfer to this brand new system would be really outlined the full process. It's not clear and not fully explained, so we're going to break down 12 different things that Nintendo doesn't directly highlight that I believe you need to know for your Nintendo Switch 2 during your initial setup. And we're actually going to start with number one, which is probably the most important and something you can't easily go back to if you skip it when you're first starting up the console, and that is the system data transfer that is available during your initial console setup that is technically not there in the settings afterwards. Now let me be clear here, because Nintendo doesn't exactly explain. They make it like you can never do this again. You certainly can, but you have to actually reset your Switch to factory settings. Then you would be able to go back and take advantage of this entire system transfer from a Switch 1 to a Switch 2. Here's the difference. If you select this initial system transfer when going through the boot up process for the first time on Switch 2, it will copy legitimately everything that is on your current Nintendo Switch system, and it will actually have you do a couple things on that old system, plug it into a Nintendo Switch power adapter, and make sure it's close to the current console to be able to pull all of the data from every profile, mind you. So if you have a shared Switch with multiple family members and multiple Nintendo account profiles, it pulls over everything during this initial setup process. If you have a lot of downloaded games installed, you are going to actually wait a while to get all of those installed on the Switch 2, but it will do the major stuff, all the profiles and accounts, and then it does seem to actually allow you to use the console while a lot of the software is still being downloaded in the background. Now, if you do not opt to do the system transfer right then and there, don't worry. Everything that is tied to your Nintendo account, especially all of the software you've purchased from the eShop, it's all there. You can still sign into your individual Nintendo account. It's not going to pull over all your family's profiles automatically, but each Nintendo account you know the login for, which you're going to have to re-verify anyway, it's going to let you go to the eShop and re-download everything. In fact, now it's through the virtual game card menu, which we'll go over in more detail in just a moment. And then when it comes to save data, you can either pull it from the cloud or transfer it from the other console at a later time. So it is not the end of the world if you did not select this initial system transfer because you wanted to hop straight into experiencing the Switch 2. You can still essentially do the same thing when it's all said and done, just by going through your virtual game card collection of games and manually picking which ones you want to reinstall. And that might actually be a better option for some individuals, because the thing about the full system transfer is it's literally everything you've downloaded from the eShop, like even some stuff that maybe could have been uninstalled on your current system, because I had demos come back. I had old free games that I hadn't checked out in years, all installing in the background whenever I did the system transfer. So I will say that if you don't think you want everything that's tied to your eShop profile and everything you've downloaded, you may just opt to do the Nintendo account sign in and do things that way. Okay, from here, the next thing I want to hop into is actually your resolution and HDR settings. Now, when you're in handheld, this is way more straightforward because you're going to be able to utilize HDR. It is an HDR display. You want to find out if your TV, when docked, also supports that, and you will want to potentially only turn it on for games that support it as well. That's one thing that I did decide to do, is under the HDR output, you could actually go to compatible software only as opposed to for all software, because I really only want it taking advantage of HDR in games that are programmed to do so the colors don't look off, or it's not trying to do anything that's not going to be a benefit anyway when HDR isn't there. Okay, I also wanted to go ahead and set my resolution to the resolution of the display that I'm on. Automatic should work fine, but if you know you're on a 4K display, it doesn't hurt to set it there for the docked output. And then you do also have RGB range, which if you know you have a more modern TV that supports a full RGB range, you can either leave this on automatic or just manually select it to go to full range. There is a screen burn-in reduction that you kind of want to have on if you have an OLED display, especially because it will lower the brightness to reduce things like burn-in. You can match the TV power state, basically auto turning on the TV when the console turns on. That is an optional feature you have. 120 hertz output, you definitely want to have this toggled on if you have a TV that supports 120 hertz refresh rate. If not, I would just toggle it off. Auto low latency mode, or ALLM, this is like a game mode on a lot of TVs, where basically the minimum amount of milliseconds that you could possibly have go by in order to have your controller input to when it responds to the screen. Leave that toggled on if you have a more modern TV that supports something like that. Obviously, you can always look into your TV model and Google the specifics of what type of features your TV actually supports, so you're not confused or anything. I will say, when it comes to adjusting the HDR, there is a couple different screens you can do it on. I like one of them more than the other because this initial screen that it does show you, it just tries to get you to basically have two of the sun icons. You want the one on the left to be visible and the one on the right to be totally invisible. And this is very display dependent. So whenever I'm sitting here holding the down button, you will not necessarily see stuff changing on your end. But this is something that Nintendo has as their kind of base default for how you set the HDR. Now, I tend to like this next screen because you can actually look at the images on screen that you're kind of familiar with multiple games, and you can click the X button to change the image, and you can adjust the brightness right here in this menu. So if you feel like it's maybe not the accurate level for what you set it to, but you kind of know what Splatoon is supposed to look like more or less on your TV, you can go ahead and set the brightness that way, as opposed to just going through that up and down screen. I think you can get it a little bit more specific if you do utilize that first menu, but you do have multiple options there. I messed this up the first time in my initial setup, and I definitely had the colors way washed out until I went back and fixed it. So definitely something worth knowing. Okay, so registering for GameChat is super straightforward. It does prompt you to actually go in and do everything you need to do. Kind of just follow the settings on this one, but I did want to highlight some options that you have after you get things registered. And by the way, this does require you to put your phone number on file with Nintendo. This is for things like whenever they choose to report, you get reported online or something like that, or somebody gets reported, they want to actually block that person and make it harder for them to rejoin with a new Nintendo account. So they do ask for a phone number one time during the registration. Once you're registered, you do not have to input that again or anything. It's not like a repeat where you're putting it in every time or anything like that. But nonetheless, that is something that you will go through whenever you're signing up. And then you have things like where you can mute your microphone directly on entering a chat session. So you have to unmute manually in case if you don't want just background noise showing up right away whenever you actually do hop into a room. And the big thing that they have is chat approved friends. So ahead of time, you can actually make the distinction on who you want to automatically be able to chat with you. And it's very easy to change this as a toggle on and off at any time, essentially. Now, whenever anybody else has set up their actual chat profile, that is whenever you can actually try to go in and invite them to a game chat. Until they actually register and do everything, it will not give you this option, but you will have like your preferred list of friends that you can invite as soon as they go through the registration process for game chat. Number 4, auto upload to the Nintendo Switch app. Now, this is actually something that's nice because Nintendo has made their screenshots and albums app quite a bit more robust this generation. You do have the ability to still record just up to 30 seconds of gameplay, but this is something that can auto be shared and loaded onto your phone now if you actually follow the steps to do so. And all that really consists of is going to the settings wheel, selecting the profile you're linking it to, and essentially coming down here and automatically enabling automatic uploads. So at this point now, every screenshot you take or gameplay clip will be automatically shared to your phone app. So you can go through these photos on your phones, these gameplay clips on your phones, and share them straight to any social media platforms you would like. It is a very easy way to do things as opposed to how it was before. And you can also filter screenshots, videos, things on system memory or SD card, or you can actually go ahead and filter by which user took the said screenshot, even things like which system the screenshots are coming from. So kind of a cool, again, more robust update from what we had before. This does require the Nintendo Switch smartphone app that you can get on iOS or Android, and it walks you through how to do all of that stuff, but something that's not toggled on automatically until you go in and do it. Number 5, virtual game cards is basically your new game library on the Nintendo Switch 2. It's literally how you're going to re-download any software if you don't have it on your console, and it's something that you will want to go through and check out. If you did the restore through the initial system settings, a lot of your games will already be here. If not, this is where you want to hop into to actually go back and find them yet again and re-download things that are not currently on the system. So very nice, easy to navigate screen. Now, the one thing you will want to be aware of with this is that you do have to, and this actually takes us to tip number 6, is set this as your primary console or your pass enabled console, as Nintendo has rebranded it. And there are a couple different ways to do this. And this comes down to hopping into the eShop, going to your profile icon in the top right corner and scrolling down to where it says under your main account info, pass enabled console. And you will want to make sure to either deregister this on your old Switch that you're not going to be using anymore, or even if you are using it, you still just, you're going to have to basically have one as the primary pass enabled console, and then you can still share games around and stuff, but you're going to have to deselect that in some cases if your virtual game cards are not actually coming over as you want them to, if it's saying that you have to go through those steps. Now, if you can't figure it out through the eShop, or it's just more convenient to go through a web browser, you can sign into your Nintendo account online and essentially complete the same steps under your profile settings. But if you are running into not having access to any of your virtual game cards for re-download, that may be the step that's actually holding you back. I would then also like to highlight the ease of use for mouse mode. If you haven't already done it, just detach your Joy-Con from the console, and immediately upon putting it on any flat surface, you are able to have a mouse and keyboard kind of set up. I guess not keyboard. That is something that I actually need to test out still at this point in time. But you do have the option to do everything in a mouse setting if you would like, in terms of actually making customizations to the system and navigating the system. And I would like to show you mouse sensitivity, which is something that people may want to actually go ahead and customize. So you can set it to high, at which point you are really not having to move very much at all in order to get the cursor to go around the screen. You can set it to low, where it takes quite a bit more of a movement to get it across the screen. And then medium is the sweet spot for me. This will also be something that can be updated and changed in select software, such as games like Metroid Prime 4 that we are expecting to use things like mouse mode. But it is a really nice and easy feature that you might forget about, like I did, until you're just messing around with your Joy-Cons and realize, wait a minute, I need to turn these things sideways and actually use the mouse controls. And I do feel like Nintendo really hit it out of the park with just how good it feels to navigate your console with the mouse setup. So that was our number 7 tip, and our number 8 is to actually do a firmware update on your controller and or camera. I did check for the camera update and it didn't look like it had anything. I had a couple users in last night's live chat that they were saying you should do a camera firmware update, so maybe it doesn't hurt to actually do that. But if you go back under controller and accessories, you will have the option to actually update your controllers. So any controller, whether that be the Joy-Con themselves, which has actually not been done, or it's something like the Pro controller, once you have it synced up, you have the option to update the firmware. Might as well just get it on the latest one so it has any adjustments that Nintendo has made now that this console is out, and they are likely refining things behind the scenes. So I do recommend any accessories you have, including the camera, go ahead and just look for that update option like you do have for both the camera and the controllers in the menu section of your Switch 2. Number 9 has to do with the ease of use of connecting a 3.5mm headphone into your Pro controller for the Switch 2. If you did pick one of these up, it works seamlessly, and you might want to go down and actually make some changes to your inputs and outputs in the system settings if you did pick up a Switch 2 Pro controller. I tend to use this feature quite a bit myself, so I wanted to highlight it here. You do have things like virtual surround sound that you can enable for the headphones. If that's something you feel like your headphones support, you can definitely toggle that on. You can mute when headphones disconnect. You can lower max headphone volume if you feel like you have people that are listening too loud. You can certainly limit that. I tend to leave that off, and it just gives you a warning about not listening too loud for long periods of time. You also have your microphone input volume and things here. And I would like to highlight quickly the actual pop-up menu. Now, if you hold your home button on your Pro controller, you can quickly adjust the audio level for the headset directly from this menu, not to mention launch any software you may have seen there in that pop-up menu. You can just quickly reassign the GL and GR buttons for this Pro controller straight from this menu as well when you are inside any game, and it's very easy to program them to any button on the fly and make changes on the fly, which is a very nice thing. Number 10 is system lock. Nintendo now allows you to create a pin code that you can set basically from the analog. You can do anything that you'd like to in terms of like up to 8 digits, and it's not the prettiest looking display out there in terms of like what it's going to look like when you unlock the console. But if you want to make sure you got younger kids in the house or anybody else, they're not hopping into games that they shouldn't, or that they don't go in and accidentally delete stuff on your profile, that system lock is optional right here in the systems menu. And anytime you wake it from sleep, you will have to put in that notification, or that pin code rather, in order to get into the console itself. I should also briefly mention that there is a full included intro video for parental controls. We won't go through all of it here, but you can set up any required parental controls that you might have here in this app. And I should say as well, it pairs very well with the smartphone app, where you can allow different things and time settings and, you know, play sessions, the amount of time they can play, what times a day they can play, all that kind of stuff you can do pretty easily through the phone app this time around. So it does seem like a step forward for parental controls. Okay, under the system tab and lower down in the menu, you do actually have the ability to stop charging around 90%, and you might wonder why you would toggle that on. And Nintendo actually explains that it shortens the amount of time the system can be used when unplugged, but it can help reduce loss of battery capacity over time. Even if turned on, the system may charge to 100% to ensure accurate battery level display. And so essentially what's happening here is when you fully charge a battery every single time, eventually over time batteries do wear down, and by stopping it around 90%, this tends to prolong the battery life longer for your Switch 2. So it doesn't mean it's going to make a day and night difference, but if you are somebody who really wants to preserve it as long as possible, as opposed to having just that extra little bit of playtime in handheld mode, you might toggle that on. I decided to go ahead and do that for myself, and you can also toggle on show system battery percentage right from this menu as well if you want to see exactly where you're at in terms of the charging process and what you're at. To close us out with number 12, Miis are back, and they're right in the actual menu that you can go ahead and create from scratch right here, or you can choose a lookalike and go through and create your own Mii profile. So the Wii era has returned once again. You can send and receive these to a local user nearby. You can also, this ties into Amiibo, enter owner nicknames of different amiibo that you have around, but you do have to first create a Mii in order to do that. But you can actually label these amiibo that they're yours, and, you know, actually tie game data to them, and obviously delete that game data and or reset the amiibo straight from this system setting menu. So those are the 12 things that popped out to me that aren't immediately clear when setting up your Nintendo Switch 2. But at this point in the video, I want to hear from you guys on what, if anything, have you found in tips and tricks in setting up the console that you think are worth mentioning. Definitely shout them out in the comments down below. And what games are you having fun with booting up and experiencing on your Switch 2 console at the start of this generation? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.